UFC Fight Night 185, aka UFC Vegas 19. We have Curtis Blaydes versus Derrick Lewis. It's gonna be a great one. We're gonna be reviewing the main card picks now. We've given you our prelim card picks already. Definitely check our channel for that video. Boxing MMA picks. I go by the name of Harris. I am joined with Zan, and we are here to give you our UFC analysis, which fights to avoid, which fights are worth the value. Definitely want to give you an underdog pick or two that's worth the money, as well as even maybe a parlay video towards the end of the parlay towards the end of the video, I should say. So definitely tune in. Let's get these fights analyzed. On the main card, we have 6 fights after a very busy prelim. So let's get right into fight number 1. We have Andrei Arlovski versus Tom Aspinall. I mean, I'll keep this one short, right? I mean, at this point in his career, Andrei Arlovski, he's actually on a 2-fight win streak, and he's actually been surviving, right? We know him at one point in time to have a very glass chin, but lately he's been able to take the power. He's been very patient in the stand-up. He's been keeping distance in the stand-up, and he's been able to put a couple of wins together. But I mean, those wins, they're not necessarily against the biggest punchers. So you're looking at, Felipe Lins as well as Tanner Boser, lost to Jairzinho, and then, beat Big Ben Rothwell, lost to Augusto Sakai. So, I mean, it's not the biggest punchers that he's beating. Whereas when we take a look at Tom Aspinall, he's trying to make a name for himself at this point, pretty young, pretty fresh in the UFC. I think first 2 fights in the UFC have been wins via knockout. We know he has the power, has some ground and pound as well, should it get to the ground. I'll keep it simple. I'm going to go with Aspinall on this one. I think he gets it done. Keep in mind, though, Arlovski is a different fighter as an example, but I also thought Tanner Boser was going to beat Arlovski pretty easily, and we saw what happened in that fight. So, be careful with that. Arlovski is almost a tricky fighter at this stage in the heavyweight division, but I am going to trust Tom Aspinall on this one. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets this one via knockout.
Yeah, I love Aspinall in this spot. I know he's new to this game. I know he's young. I believe he's a boxer, though. I believe he's a boxer, he's showing me that he's a boxer. And I think that when you look at Tanner Boser and Philippe Lins and Ben Rothwell, those guys have power. Those guys are like the overhand. They throw overhands and stuff and knock people out, and they look bad all fight, and then they throw the overhander. That's how those guys are. They're not really the finessers. They're not really the finesse technical strikers that can take advantage of an older fighter like Arlovski. Arlovski was able to kickbox those guys because those guys didn't have the technique as him. And he's fighting a fighter now that has that technique, that has that good strength, that is able to has the good footwork to get in. So I like Aspinall in this fight. I think this is going to be a different fight than Boser or Lins. I think this is a bad matchup for Arlovski. Fighting a much taller fighter, or not much taller, a couple inches taller, and who has good boxing, and he's looking to knock him out. He's from England, so those guys are good with the boxing, right? So I like Aspinall in this spot here. I think it's going to be a different fight than the other ones Arlovski's winning. I think Arlovski's going to have a hard time with this guy's boxing skills and the power.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Definitely agreed on that one. Let's move on to the second fight of our main card. We have Philip Hawes versus Nassourdine Imavov. Funny enough, we actually reviewed this fight last month on the Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar card. It never ended up happening. Actually, go check our video from 1 month ago to see how our commentary today compares to the commentary back then. But when I look at Imavov, I mean, I see, good calm movement. He's pretty light on his feet. Doesn't really strike first, though. Doesn't really throw combinations. Kind of likes to counter punch, wait till his opponent throws first. I do ask myself, what does the chin look like? We saw Jordan Williams hurt him, hurt him twice, I should say, even though one of them was from an accidental headbutt. But like I said, he hurt him twice, and that's Jordan Williams, who's undersized for the 185 division. So, I mean, naturally, I'm going to ask myself, what kind of chin does Imavov have? Because when I look at Philip Hawes, I mean, he's coming off of Contender Series, scary power, right? Really scary power. He cuts the ring off, almost has that stalking type of stand up, throws a lot of fakes, feints, sets up the punches. But one thing that's interesting to note about Philip Hawes is that, he's not necessarily reckless with it. I mean, he seems to come in with a game plan. If you watch his fight in the Dana White Contender Series, I mean, he used that calf kick um, pretty effectively to close distance. So I wouldn't be surprised if Philip Hawes wins via knockout here. I will say, be careful. There is some value in Imavov for sure, but I'm gonna trust the IQ that I assume Philip Hawes has on this one, and I'm gonna go with Philip Hawes, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being by knockout.
Yeah, Harris, I think that I'm with you with the knockout idea because I think that Phil Hawes is really dangerous in that first round. And I think likely what happens is he lands on Imavov and he knocks him out. That is the path that I see here in this fight. Because with Phil Hawes, you're getting a guy that looks really big, like he should be in the weight class up. And Imavov, yeah, he's a taller guy, but he doesn't have the physical athleticism that Phil Hawes, Division I wrestler, has, right? And I think he was a champion as well. So in NCAA wrestling. So, but he definitely has high level wrestling, so he can utilize that. But what I'm worried about Hawes is his cardio. I'm gonna go with Imavov in this fight. But as far as betting goes, how I'm looking at this fight, I'm gonna watch this fight live. And if Hawes does not knock him out in the first round, I'm gonna put a bet on Imavov to win the fight. But I need Hawes to win the first round. So Hawes likely wins the first round. Because I can see Imavov, as the fight goes on, getting stronger. He is a long-rangey striker. He has decent cardio for that division. He has wrestling, but not on the level of Hawes. So as the fight goes on, because he has the knowledge and the know-how of wrestling, as the fight goes on, it's going to be harder for Hawes to get the takedowns. And he's going to be tired, I think. And I think that's where Imavov can pretty much put in some work and win the next second and the third round. So I'm going to make the pick for Imavov. That's my pick here. But again, as I'm betting, I'm watching the fight live because I think Hawes has that power to put him away in that first round. And that's why I'm not confident on this pick. But if this fight gets out of the first round, I'm going to go make a live play on Imavov. So, well, my pick is Imavov.
Yeah, great point. Great point on that. And I do agree in terms of Phil Hawes. He's going to be most dangerous in that first round. So, let's see what that looks like. Is he sort of go for broke or is it, he still has some in the tank and still is moving at the same pace in rounds 2 and 3. That's going to be interesting to see. And there's definitely a live play in this fight on either side. So beware with that one. Fighters with similar records, the odds are pretty close. And I think it's that way for a reason. Let's move on to fight number 3. In that case, we have Aleksei Oleinik versus Chris Daukaus. Speaking of, I guess competition downward for one fighter and competition upward for another fighter. Why don't you go ahead and take this one away?
Yeah, this to me, this fight can go two ways. Either Daukaus knocks him out, or Oleinik submits him. I think that picking a fight not to go to distance, it's heavyweight, so that's not going to pay much. But when I see this, when I look at this fight, I see Oleinik. He lost to Derrick Lewis, but at one point he had Derrick Lewis hurt. He had him mounted. And he had him in a lock, had him in a submission, and obviously Derrick Lewis survived and knocked him out. So he was winning that fight before the knockout. He beat up Werdum. He beat up Maurice Green. So he's a live play here. Oleinik, he's a live underdog here to win this fight because he definitely has the much better grappling and he has really good submissions. But when you look at Daukaus, you're looking at a guy that is well trained. Martinez BJJ, he's well trained. He's well-rounded. He has heavy hands, fast hands for a big guy. He can just put you out. So I think this is a tough fight for me to pick. I can see Oleinik winning this fight. I can see him submitting Daukaus. But I'm going to actually go with Daukaus. I think the UFC wants him in this spot to win. I think UFC put him here for a reason. I think the UFC thinks he's ready for this because I think he's new blood in the heavyweight division, a division that doesn't have a lot of action. Doesn't really have the growth as the other divisions. It's like even the female divisions are actually growing faster than the heavyweight divisions. So I think the UFC is setting up Chris, even though I don't see how he wins this fight, but I'm going to go with Chris Daukaus here. I think he's going to knock out Oleinik, but this is a tricky fight for me. But I believe the UFC wants him to win here. I think it's comparable to his fight versus Rodrigo Nascimento, who was trying to get him to the ground. He kept it on the feet, knocked him out, right? So I think that's the same type of fighter he's fighting. A guy's going to try to get him on the feet at a higher level. And I think that Chris is going to knock him out. So I'm going to go Chris Daukaus to knock him out. I think he has enough know-how to keep this on the feet.
And to your point versus Nascimento, that was his his most recent fight. The fight before that, versus Parker Porter, he was 241 pounds in that fight. And then he fights, not too long later, and he's 227. And he came in, and we were sort of asking ourselves at that time, wait, whoa, why is he 227? And he looked a lot sharper. The hand speed was there. Pretty accurate, pretty strong, a lot of power in his punches. But it's not by, sort of looping strike. It's more so with accuracy and with precision. Pretty technically sound, right? So, I mean, you took all the words out of my mouth. I mean, for a lot of the same reasons, I feel Daukaus is my pick as well. I think the stand-up will be the difference. I think, he'll know enough to keep it on the feet. It's not like Oleinik has, smothering wrestling or takedown attempts. It's more so if he gets you against the cage and sort of, finds different ways to get you like that. But I'm going to go with Chris Daukaus, somewhat of a hesitant pick. It's always heavyweight beware on this one. But we're looking at two lighter guys in the heavyweight division, both of them weighing in at about 230 pounds. Chris Daukaus, wouldn't be surprised if Chris Daukaus by knockout has some extra pay on it. So definitely maybe check that. But I'm going to go with Chris Daukaus as well as my overall winner for this fight. In that case, fight number 4. Let's look at Charles Rosa versus Darrick Minner. Darrick Minner, of course, we know is Mr. Guillotine. 11 of his 25 wins are by guillotine, and 22 of his 25 wins are by submission in general. So that's going to be very interesting. Pretty decent wrestler, serviceable stand-up. I think he has some good movement around the cage, fights from the outside, and kind of gives you kicks from different angles. I like some things about Charles Rosa. I mean, the first thing that you want to point out is that he's a BJJ black belt. So you would assume, or at least hope, that he's not going to get caught with a first-round guillotine by Darrick Minner, because we know that's what Darrick Minner is going to go for, right? I mean, he's going to use a lot of his energy in that first round. He's going to give you a high pace. He's going to, as we see here, Darrick Minner's average fight time is within a round, 4 minutes and 7 seconds. So he's giving you a lot of output in that first round. I feel like Darrick Minner starts to fade as the fight goes on because he's squeezing a lot. He's giving a lot of pace in that first round. And again, speaking about Charles Rosa, you hope that he's going to be able to defend that with the BJJ black belt. What concerned me a bit was that if you watch Charles Rosa versus Bryce Mitchell, of course, I mean, we know who Bryce Mitchell is in terms of his ability, but that fight was interesting because Bryce Mitchell was able to get Charles Rosa in, I think, maybe 4 or 5 serious submission attempts, head and arm chokes, a couple rear naked chokes as well. It concerned me that as a black belt, Charles Rosa allowed that to happen. But what impressed me was that he survived it every single time. He looked composed doing it. You never really thought he was in danger of tapping based on how composed he looked. And he kind of survived those attempts, right? So if that happens versus Darrick Minner's guillotine attempts in round 1 and even in probably the earlier parts of round 2, then I like Charles Rosa for a lot of different reasons in this fight. Otherwise, we've seen Darrick Minner, even in his last fight, he caught a guillotine within a few seconds. Anyone can get it in terms of the guillotines. Minner, he can be one-dimensional at times. I mean, he becomes a much easier opponent to face if you can survive that first round, to my point. Again, it's a kind of a back and forth fight. It's kind of hard to pick a clear winner on this one, but I am going to go with Charles Rosa on this one. I think he will survive that early guillotine onslaught, that early pace that Darrick Minner puts on him. And I think that he's going to have more in the tank in the later part of the fight. I think he has more to offer in the stand-up as well. So, as this fight goes on, I see Darrick Minner, his attempts becoming less and less effective. I see him becoming more and more tired, and I see Rosa really starting to win the fight in the latter stages of the fight.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I like Charles Rosa as well. I think Minner's only way to win this fight is if he gets a like a leg lock or a heel hook or a guillotine. I think that's his only way to win this fight. Charles showed us some really good stand-up. He beat Aguilar. Um, he outstruck a striker, right? So he was looking really good in that fight. I picked Aguilar. I lost. His fight against Bryce Mitchell, yeah, I agree. Bryce schooled him on the ground. But Bryce Mitchell has shown us he's probably the best grappler in that featherweight division. Like in his division, in the featherweight division, or Ryan Hall. So like Bryce is on the next level. So that's that beatdown he got with that grappling against Bryce. I think Bryce would do that to Derek Minner as well. I think Derek Minner is kind of one-dimensional with his grappling. He doesn't have the best takedowns to get it where he wants it. He really just has a choke that he utilizes, right? So I really like Charles Rose in this spot. I'm really confident in Charles, but obviously, whenever a fighter has a specialty like Minner with that choke, you got to always be careful that he can pull out that special move. So, but I think there, as you said, Charles Rosa, he survived those chokes from Bryce Mitchell. He was in a lot of compromised spots. He got out of them. I think in this fight, he's going to be the better grappler. He's going to be the better striker. I think he's going to have the better cardio, as you indicated. He's going to be the better athlete. I think he's almost better everywhere except for submissions. So I like Charles Rosa here. He has too many paths to win this fight.
Sounds good to me. Let's, in that case, go to our co-main event. We have Ketlen Vieira versus Yana Kunitskaya. Ketlen Vieira, I mean, a bit of a herky-jerky stand-up, in my opinion, at the very least. I mean, her jab could be better, but I do like how she uses it at length. She does come in from a distance with that jab and kind of keeps a distance with that jab. Somewhat predictable with her right hands. I mean, she kind of, I don't want to say winds it up, but you kind of know when it's coming. That said, I mean, it's pretty solid when it connects, right? It's a solid straight right hand. She has a pretty solid right hook as well that I like that she uses, and she's very willing to stand. We saw her, in her fights versus, Irene Aldana. Obviously, Aldana knocked her out, but she was willing to stay on the feet there. She was willing to engage on the feet there. We saw her versus Sijara Eubank. Yes, Ketlen Vieira did land key takedowns in two of the rounds, if I'm not mistaken. But again, she was willing to stand up with Sijara Eubank and keep this fight on the feet. And actually, some of that was the fact that Sijara Eubank was kind of stuffing her takedown attempts. But nonetheless, she's willing to stand. We know that she has good takedowns for fighters that can't really defend it. She's a black belt in judo. We know that she has good grappling. She's a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Pretty solid fighter overall that has a number of different tools that she can use and potentially a number of different paths that she can use. When I'm looking at Yana Kunitskaya, straight Thai style, Thai boxing, Thai kickboxing, mainly Thai boxing, I should say. Very good clinch. I like her clinch a lot. She has pretty strong underhooks. She keeps you against the cage. Pretty strong clinch situations and throws a lot of knees in those situations, right? Loves those Thai clinches. That's how she scores a great deal of her points, in my opinion. And she's physically strong, even though she has a bit more of I guess, somewhat of a lanky frame, for lack of a better word. She's pretty physically strong, and she holds her opponents against the cage when needed. I like the way she puts her strikes together. But one key factor, I will say this, I'm going with Ketlen Vieira. One key factor that I've seen from Yana Kunitskaya is that she gives up takedowns. And that's concerning for someone like Ketlen Vieira, who we know is going to use that. Use the ground game. I do feel that Yana Kunitskaya has striking advantage, at least from a technique perspective. But what's going to be interesting is going to see how does that actually translate in somewhat of a bit of clash of styles, where we have someone who's throwing more straight punches, more technique, more Thai boxing style, versus someone like a Ketlen Vieira, who's maybe a little bit more wild with it, at least comparatively. I do believe Kunitskaya has the better stand-up, but I believe Ketlen Vieira has the better ground game. I think she has the ability to actually go for and land the takedowns, and I think she's going to be able to land them to score points. Right. The question really is going to be the at the very least the technical striking advantage that I feel Kunitskaya has. Is that going to be enough? Is that going to be a large gap of an advantage for Kunitskaya, or is that part of it going to be somewhat 50-50, whereas Ketlen Vieira has, in my opinion, the clear advantage on the ground? I will say this. I think the odds are too much on the side of Ketlen Vieira, almost solely for that reason. I wouldn't mind putting a straight up underdog bet on Yana Kunitskaya. But, I mean, if we're picking winners here, I do think Ketlen Vieira is the winner. I think she has more tools, and I think she has a better path to victory here.
I'm with you on that. Caitlin's going to be the bigger girl in there. They as you said, Kunitskaya, you definitely, she might be the better striker, and she's very active with the striking. We're talking about a fight that's going to be going to decision. Who's going to win who the judges are going to pick to win this fight. And Caitlin's going to mix in some takedowns. Caitlin's going to utilize her jiu-jitsu in this fight because she's going to realize that, yeah, she can stand with her, but she has a big advantage on the ground. So I'm with you on this fight. I like Caitlin in this spot. Again, Kunitskaya is definitely a live underdog. I'm with you on that. I agree with you that she's a live underdog. As we've been seeing in these female fights, a lot of times the underdog can just pull it out, right? So yeah, Yana is definitely live here, but I like Caitlin. I think she's the tougher girl. I think she's the bigger girl. I think she has a bit more paths to victory with the grappling, and her striking's not bad. She has good timing, and sometimes timing beats speed, right? So I'm going to go with Ketlen Vieira here to win this fight.
Yeah, for sure. I like that pick. I like that pick a lot as well. I just wish the odds were a little closer. Minus 280 is a little steep on that one, but she should get it done.
Too much. I might put it on 1 or 2 parlays, eh? Harris, I wouldn't like have that on every parlay. Maybe 1.
Yeah, agreed.
But yeah,
agreed. That could be a parlay killer.
Exactly.
So be careful with that one. That definitely could be a parlay killer. But nonetheless, I mean, again, we both think that Ketlen Vieira should get it done. So in that case, let's move on to our main event. Main event, we have Curtis Blaydes versus Derrick Lewis. This one, for me, I mean, doesn't really require much analysis at all. I'll be honest with you. I think, I mean, we know both fighters at this point. I think Curtis Blaydes is basically better everywhere. I think he maybe has the more, I want to say, sound stand-up. Although Derrick Lewis, of course, we know is going to be a really big puncher. And then obviously Curtis Blaydes has the huge wrestling advantage. I mean, we see what he does to everyone, but we saw what he did to someone like an Alexander Volkov. Now, much different fighter than Derrick Lewis, of course, but I think, you know, Blaydes would have the same clear wrestling advantage on Derrick Lewis as he did against Alexander Volkov. So, you know, I think this one is somewhat easy to pick from the perspective of Blaydes just wrestling Lewis until he's too tired to do anything else. But we know Derrick Lewis, and we know that he has at least one shot in him almost at any point in the fight, despite how tired he feels. We know that physically he's coming in, you know, sort of not as heavy or at least not as big as he once was. We know he's trying to sort of become in better shape. We know he's trying to, you know, sort of gear up for a title run, at least in his mind. But I don't think he beats Curtis Blaydes. I mean, Curtis Blaydes, you look at his record, 14-2. His only losses are against Francis Ngannou. And I don't think Lewis is as fast or as explosive as a striker as Francis Ngannou, although he's debatably as big of a striker as Francis Ngannou. So I'm going with Curtis Blaydes on this one. I feel pretty good about it. I think those odds are steep because it is heavyweight beware at the end of the day. But Curtis Blaydes just has way more tools, and he should get this one done.
Yeah, I'm going to make it short and sweet. Curtis Blaydes all day. I think the wrestling's gonna be too much, but we know Curtis can gas right as the fight goes on if he doesn't put Derrick away. So I'm gonna go with Curtis Blaydes to win the fight. But I seen some really good odds on this fight. Curtis Blaydes to win by decision because everyone's expecting him to win by knockout, which he likely does. But I'm looking at the odds. I think it's like plus 500 and something for Curtis to win by. You could check it after, right? For Curtis to win by decision because he likely wins by knockout, maybe. But he's like just like the Volkov fight. He gasses as the fight goes on. Then he just accepts. Okay, I'm gonna win by decision. I'll just keep taking him down and just lay and prey on the guy. It's boring, but it's effective. So I'm gonna take Curtis Blaydes to win the fight. And then closer to the fight, I'm going to be looking at an outcome on that, whether I should take a bet on the knockout or take a bet on that decision prop.
Good point. And again, I feel like in a lot of ways that Volkov fight is a great blueprint as to what could happen. And if that's the case, I mean, like you said, that one ended up being a decision. He kind of tired out, but he knew he was going to win the rounds. But he knew that he wasn't really going to finish. So, quote unquote, settling for a decision at that point. And if you're talking plus 500, I mean, obviously check that. But if there's some good odds on that, I can see that happening for sure. But yeah, I mean, Curtis Blaydes all day on this one. Going to be an entertaining fight, perhaps, but Curtis Blaydes should be too much and should get it done. Let's take this one to Vegas in that case. So let's consider the entire card. What are we looking at? Let's go with an entire card parlay. Do you have one?
Yeah, I got my boy Curtis Blaydes. Yep. Jamal Edwards. Jakar Klose. And Tom Aspinall.
I like that. So that would be plus 297 in that case. $100 will return $397 on that one. For our bigger bettors, let's go $250. $250 will return $993. So definitely some opportunity there. If I were to go with a parlay of my own, let's take a look here. I'm going to go with, I do think Blaydes is the smart pick as well. I do think Tom Aspinall is the smart pick as well. And, let's see here. I'm going to go with, this is a little tough. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I'm piggybacking off of you, but I feel pretty solid about these three, man. Jamal Emmers, Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blaydes. Obviously, the payout is not as big, but I think the win is a lot more likely. $100 will get you $250 on that one. $250 will return $631. So definitely still some value there for sure. And in terms of the entire card, do we have any, I guess, just additional picks to watch out for? We don't have to maybe label it as underdogs or anything specific, but anything to watch out for.
What I'll show is the picks that I'm going to be looking to bet one-off, like one-on-ones, right? Like straight up money lines. Like the Draco Rodriguez versus Sahabi, I'm looking at Rodriguez. I'm going to put money on that. I'm looking at the Emmers fight. I'm going to put money on that. I'm going to put money on the Klose fight. The Wineland Castaneda, I haven't decided yet. I'm going to put money on Danny Chavez to beat Gordon. I haven't decided on a Rosa Landwehr. I have not decided on the Imavov and Hawes unless Hawes wins the first round and he looks like he's gassing. And then I'm going to go Imavov live. Survey Spivak Vandera, I haven't made a decision, but I might throw a little small change on the underdog there. I think you got to watch out for that fight. Spivak should win, but I think the guy's going to be 30, 40 pounds heavier, so that could be an issue. I might put a play on. I'm going to put a play on Casey O'Neill. I'm going to take a shot on her newcomer in the UFC. I'm going to take a shot on Chris Daukaus, Aspinall, and Blaydes, and Rosa. Not Vieira, not Kunitskaya, And I'm going to take a shot on my boy. Actually, I'm not going to take a shot on the Alves Sabatini, but Alves should win that fight.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, I mean, 9 fights that you're willing to take a look at sort of on an individual basis. That's going to be interesting to see how those turn out. But yeah, this is an interesting card. This, again, is a real interesting card. I think there is some pretty close odds on this card, which makes for some pretty decent money-making opportunities. So, I mean, as usual, please, please, please let us know in the comments how you feel. What fights are you looking forward to? What fights are you betting on? What does your parlay look like? Who are your underdog picks? Which fights of ours do you agree with? Which fights of ours do you disagree with? As usual, in addition to that, like, comment, rate, subscribe, do all that good stuff that's going to help the algorithms out. Share it with your friends. Share it with anyone that is looking for some additional UFC insight and UFC analysis. We would definitely appreciate that. In the meantime, I go by the name of Harris. I am joined with Zan. We have UFC Fight Night 185, aka UFC Vegas 19. Curtis Blaydes versus Derrick Lewis. Let's get this money.
Let's get the bag.